For the entire year I've been with Sierra, we've followed one unbreakable rule: no pictures, not a single one. It was her thing, her gospel. Social media is a privacy inferno, Owen, she'd say, her voice dead serious like she was quoting scripture. A digital footprint is the modern curse. I always just chalked it up to a quirk, part of her enigmatic charm, a bit eccentric maybe, but I figured it was harmless. In a world where everyone documents every boring meal, her desire for anonymity felt kind of romantic, almost noble. Then last week something shifted. We drove out to this old, sprawling apple orchard miles from anywhere. The sun was setting, that perfect golden hour light turning the air thick and hazy. She was actually genuinely happy. I remember the exact moment. She was laughing, a real unburdened laugh, while chasing a honeybee away from her cup of warm cider. She was wearing this beat-up navy blue baseball cap pulled down low, obscuring most of her face. And I did it. I pulled out my phone. She had her back mostly to me, looking out over the rows of gnarled trees, and I snapped a single picture. It wasn't even a great shot. Just her profile, the sharp line of her jaw, the brim of the cap shadowing her eyes. But it was mine, it was real. It was the only one. Fast forward to tonight. I'm a line cook, and after a grueling 10-hour shift, all I wanted was a shower and a cold beer. I stopped at a grimy convenience store to grab milk. And there, on the community bulletin board, tacked between a flyer for a lost cat and an ad for guitar lessons, was a police notice. It was a fresh printout, the ink still dark and stark against the cheap paper. The headline was blunt: information wanted in connection with multiple missing persons cases. And below it, God, below it was my photo, not a picture that looked like her. Not a grainy CCTV still captured from a distance. It was my picture, the one from the orchard. The exact angle, the same stupid baseball cap, the same golden light filtering through the apple trees. My photo. How in the hell did the police get my photo? I just stood there, the milk carton sweating in my hand. My blood didn't just run cold. It felt like it evaporated, like my veins were suddenly full of dust. The woman I love, the woman who preaches about the curse of a digital footprint, was staring back at me from a wanted poster. And the picture they were using to hunt her was the only one that existed. I practically sprinted home, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The short drive felt like an eternity, every red light a personal torment. I burst through the door of our apartment, calling her name. Sierra. Sierra, are you here? The only answer was the faint hum of the refrigerator. The apartment was empty, quiet, exactly as I'd left it that morning, but it felt different now, hostile. The familiar space suddenly felt like a stranger's house, a stage set for a play I didn't know I was in. My mind was a chaotic storm of denial and terror. This had to be a mistake. A misunderstanding. Maybe she had a twin. Maybe someone stole my phone, hacked my cloud, framed her. The thoughts were flimsy, pathetic, and I knew it. The only thing that felt real was the icy dread coiling in my gut. I had to find something, anything. A piece of mail, a driver's license, a goddamn birthday card from her mom, something to prove she was who she said she was. And that's when I did something I'd never done before. I violated her sacred privacy. I went straight for the old, darkwood trunk at the foot of our bed. It was her one off-limits object. She kept it locked always. Just old memories, babe, she'd say with a dismissive wave. Too sentimental to throw out, too cringy to look at. I'd never pushed it. Now I didn't hesitate. I found a screwdriver in the kitchen junk drawer and pried the cheap lock open with a sickening crack of splintering wood. My hands were shaking as I lifted the lid. I expected, I don't know, old yearbooks, love letters from an ex. What I found was a void, a profound, terrifying emptiness. There were no documents. No passports, no birth certificate, no letters. There were no photographs of family or friends, no childhood trinkets, nothing that tethered her to a past. Instead, the trunk held a bizarre collection of objects that made no sense. A few sets of clothes, all in sizes that were either way too small or far too large for her slender frame. A hand-drawn chart of the night sky, but the constellations were all wrong, twisted into unfamiliar patterns. A leather-bound journal, completely blank. And then I saw it, tucked into the pocket of a man's oversized flannel shirt. It was a university student ID card. It was from a small college on the other side of the country, dated 4 years ago. The name on the card wasn't Sierra, it was Eliza Mayhew. And the face in the photo, a smiling girl with bright, hopeful eyes and a spray of freckles across her nose, it wasn't Sierra at all. It was a complete stranger. The panic I felt in the store was just an appetizer. This was the main course, a deep, cold, paralyzing fear that I wasn't just dating a liar but someone or something that didn't even exist. Edit 1. Wow, okay, I didn't expect this to blow up. My phone is buzzing like a hornet's nest. Thank you everyone for the DMS and the concern. I'm still trying to process all this. To answer the main question everyone is asking, no, I haven't called the cops yet. I know, that sounds insane. But how do I even begin to explain this? Hello, 911. My girlfriend, who isn't my girlfriend, is on a wanted poster with a picture I took, and her magic trunk is full of nothing. They'd think I was having a psychotic break. I need to think this through just for a minute. I need to be logical, even though my entire world has just gone sideways. A lot of you are asking about her, about us. How we met, what she was like. It all seems so normal on the surface, which is the scariest part. We met about a year ago. I joined this weird niche meetup group for night hikers. People who liked walking through the woods after dark. It sounds creepy, but it was mostly just quiet and peaceful. She was there on my first night. She was a silhouette against the moonlight, and I was immediately drawn to her. She was quiet, observant, with this dry, witty sense of humor that would just pop out of nowhere. She told me she was a freelance data analyst. It made sense at the time. Her work hours were all over the place. Sometimes she'd be up all night, typing furiously on her laptop, the screen filled with lines of code I couldn't comprehend. Other times she'd sleep for a whole day. Big project, she'd mumble, just crunching the numbers. It was a perfect excuse for an erratic lifestyle. The real red flags, the ones that are screaming at me now, were the little things. The quirks I found so endearing. She never talked about her family, ever. If I brought it up, she'd just give a sad little smile and say, "We're not close," and the conversation would be over. There was no room for follow-up questions. It was a door slamming shut. And the mirror thing, oh God, the mirror thing. We have a big mirror in our hallway, and she would actively avoid it. If she had to walk past it, she'd turn her head or hold a hand up to block her reflection. I asked her about it once. She just shrugged. "Hate the way I look," she'd said. "It's like looking at a stranger." She was also intensely sensitive to certain sounds. Not loud noises, but rhythmic, cyclical ones. The ticking of a clock drove her nuts. I had to replace all of ours with digital ones. In the summer, the sound of cicadas buzzing outside would make her visibly distressed, her whole body tensing up. She'd have to put on noise-canceling headphones. I remember one night we were watching some dumb sci-fi movie and I made a joke. I poked her in the ribs and said, "You're so weird sometimes. It's like you're an alien who just got here and is still learning how to be a person." I was expecting her to laugh, to playfully punch me back. But she didn't. She just turned to look at me, her eyes wide and completely serious, and she said in this soft, quiet voice, "Sometimes it feels that way." I just laughed it off back then, thinking it was her weird, deadpan humor. But now I hear it replaying in my head, and it sounds less like a joke and more like a confession. Every single memory is being recontextualized, twisted into something sinister. I'm not just questioning who she is, I'm questioning the last year of my life. Was any of it real? My hands were trembling so badly I could barely type on my phone's keyboard. Eliza Mayhew, the name felt alien in my mouth. I started searching, my fingers flying across the screen. The first few results were generic social media profiles, all inactive for years. But then I found it, a local news article from a small town in Oregon dated 3 years ago. The headline hit me like a physical blow. University student Eliza Mayhew missing after solo camping trip. The article was brief. It said Eliza, a 20-year-old botany major, had driven to a remote national park, a place known for its dense, old-growth forests. She was an experienced hiker, but she'd told her parents she'd only be gone for the weekend. She never came back. Her car was found at a trailhead, her tent and camping gear undisturbed. There were no signs of a struggle, no tracks, no witnesses. She had simply vanished. The article included a picture of her parents, their faces etched with a grief so raw it felt like it was radiating through my phone screen. And next to them, a larger photo of Eliza herself. It was the same smiling, freckle-faced girl from the student ID. This was it, the logical explanation. Sierra wasn't Sierra. She was Eliza Mayhew, a missing person who, for some reason, had adopted a new identity and was now wanted by the police. Maybe she'd run away. Maybe she'd gotten into trouble, joined that gang, or whatever the poster was implying. It was a terrifying thought, but it was a human thought. It was a story with a beginning and an end, a story that fit within the known rules of the world. I clung to that explanation like a drowning man to a piece of driftwood, but my curiosity, now a morbid, obsessive thing, wouldn't let me stop. I kept digging. I started searching for the name of the national park combined with missing persons, unsolved cases, things like that. That's when I stumbled into a much darker corner of the internet. It was a forum, one of those ancient-looking websites with a plain black background and white text, dedicated to high strangeness and paranormal folklore. The design was straight out of 1999, but the posts were recent. One thread, titled "The Empty People of Cascade Woods," was specifically about the park where Eliza had disappeared. I clicked on it, my stomach churning. The original post was a long, rambling account from a user who claimed to be a former park ranger. He wrote about a local legend, a story the old-timers whispered about but never said too loudly. They called them hollows or empty people. The legend said they weren't ghosts but something else, something that wore human skin like a suit. The post described them as entities that couldn't form their own identities, so they stole them. They were drawn to people who were isolated, people with weak social ties, people who wouldn't be missed right away. They would study their target, mimic them, and eventually replace them. The post ended with a chilling line: "The one thing they can't fake is a reflection. They can't stand mirrors, and a camera flash is like a spotlight on their soul. They can't be recorded because deep down there's nothing there to record." It was insane, utterly, completely insane. The kind of stuff you read at 3 a.m. to creep yourself out. But as I sat there in the silence of my apartment, the student ID of a missing girl on one side of my laptop and a forum post about skin-stealing monsters on the other, the insane explanation was the one that was starting to make a terrifying amount of sense. It explained the mirrors, it explained the hatred of cameras, it explained the empty trunk, the blank past. Just as my mind was about to snap from the cognitive dissonance, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a picture of her, the one I'd set as her contact photo, a generic stock image of a sunflower because she wouldn't let me use a real one. It was Sierra. She was calling me, my thumb hovered over the green accept icon, paralyzed. Every instinct screamed at me to throw the phone against the wall, to run out of the apartment and never look back. But I couldn't, I had to know. I swiped to answer, my hand so slick with sweat that it almost didn't work. "Hey you," she said. Her voice was normal, completely, terrifyingly normal. It was the same warm, slightly husky tone she always used, the one that usually made me feel like I was finally home. Tonight, it sounded like a perfect, soulless mimicry. "Hey," I managed to croak out. My own voice sounded foreign, a stranger's voice in my throat. "Sorry, I'm running a little late," she said, and I could hear the faint sound of traffic in the background. "The subway was an absolute nightmare. I'll be home in about 15 minutes. Do you mind ordering a pizza? I'm starving." Pizza? She was talking about pizza. My mind was reeling, bouncing between a missing persons case and a legend about forest monsters, and she was asking about pepperoni or mushrooms. The sheer banality of it was more jarring than any confession would have been. "Yeah," I said, my voice flat. "Sure, I'll order something." "Great, see you soon. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. The line went dead, leaving me in a silence that felt heavier and more menacing than before. 15 minutes. I had 15 minutes before she walked through that door. I moved like a robot, my actions disconnected from my thoughts. I walked into the living room and placed the items on the coffee table, arranging them like exhibits in a trial. The student ID of Eliza Mayhew, the printout of the wanted poster, the picture I took staring up at me like an accusation. I sat on the couch, my back ramrod straight, and I waited. The sound of her keys in the lock was the loudest sound I had ever heard. The door swung open and she walked in, a grocery bag in one arm. "I decided to grab some beer to go with the," she started to say, and then she saw me. She saw my face and then her eyes drifted down to the coffee table. The smile on her face didn't fall, it just dissolved. It evaporated, leaving her features utterly blank. It wasn't a mask of shock or fear or anger. It was the absence of everything. It was the face of a statue. She slowly placed the grocery bag on the floor, the clinking of the beer bottles echoing in the tense silence. She walked over, her movements deliberate and unnervingly graceful, and stood over the coffee table, looking down. For a long moment she said nothing. She just stared at the two pieces of paper. Then I saw her shoulders slump, not in defeat, but in a kind of profound, cosmic weariness. The kind of exhaustion that comes from running for 100 years. Finally, I found my voice. It was barely a whisper. "Who are you?" She didn't look at me. She reached out a hand, her long, pale fingers hesitating for a second before gently, almost tenderly, touching the face on the wanted poster. The face of Eliza Mayhew, the face that was also somehow her own. "This one," she said, her voice soft and filled with a strange, unidentifiable sorrow. "This one was almost perfect. The best suit I've ever found." She looked up at me then, and her eyes held no malice, only a deep, bottomless sadness. I didn't know it still had an owner looking for it. Her words didn't compute. They were just sounds hanging in the air, devoid of meaning. Suit, owner, my brain refused to process them. She wasn't denying anything, she wasn't explaining. She was confirming a reality that I couldn't possibly accept. "I'm sorry, Owen," she said, her voice cracking just a little. "Our time is up." Final update, she's gone. I'm not sure how else to say it. After she said what she said, she just turned and walked into the bedroom. I followed her, my feet feeling like lead blocks. My mind was a blank slate, wiped clean by the sheer impossibility of the moment. I was expecting a confrontation, an explanation, tears, a fight, anything, but there was nothing. I stood in the doorway and watched her. She didn't pack a bag, she didn't grab her keys or her wallet. She just walked to the center of the room by the window and stopped. She turned back to look at me one last time. "You were good, Owen," she whispered. "You were real." And then she just wasn't there anymore. It wasn't like she ran or jumped out the window. The window was closed and locked. It was more like she faded, like a projection being switched off. One second she was there, a solid person made of flesh and bone, and the next, there was just empty space where she had been standing. The air shimmered for a moment and then it was still. She was gone. The police found me. Of course they did. They tracked me from the convenience store's security camera footage, saw me staring at the poster. Two detectives came to the apartment. I told them a story, a heavily edited, sane version of the story. I told them my girlfriend's name was Sierra, that she was secretive, and that after I confronted her about the poster, she ran. They looked at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion. They told me the woman on the poster was, in fact, Eliza Mayhew, and that she was the prime suspect in a sophisticated ring that scammed and kidnapped vulnerable people across 3 states. They believe my Sierra was her, a master of disguise, a core member of this criminal enterprise. It's a neat, tidy explanation. It makes sense. It's the story the world will accept. I should be relieved. I should be mourning the woman I loved who turned out to be a monster. But all I feel is a hollow, ringing silence in my head. After the police left, I started cleaning, a mindless, robotic task. I stripped the bed and that's when I found it. Tucked under the mattress, right where she used to sleep, was the navy blue baseball cap she'd worn at the orchard. I picked it up, the cheap fabric feeling heavy in my hand. And underneath it, lying flat against the white fabric of the mattress protector, was one more thing. It was thin, almost translucent, and it shimmered with an oily, iridescent light, catching the dim lamplight in a way that seemed to refract colors I had never seen before. It was shaped like a wing, about the length of my thumb, patterned with veins as delicate and complex as a dragonfly's. But it was no dragonfly. It felt smooth and brittle, like a sliver of mica, yet impossibly strong. It was the wing of an insect that does not exist on this planet. I'm holding it now. The rational part of my brain, the part that's still desperately trying to function, is telling me it's all a coincidence. That Sierra was Eliza, a brilliant, disturbed criminal who played me for a fool. But the other part of me, the part that saw a person dissolve into thin air, knows better. I'm left here in the quiet of my apartment with two conflicting, impossible truths. And the only proof I have of the one I truly believe is this beautiful, terrifying, impossible thing.